The day William learned family court isn't about facts. Let's call him William. Not because that's his name. It's not. But if I use his real name, somebody will complain, somebody will be offended, somebody will write a 7-page Facebook post explaining why I've traumatized them, and a social worker somewhere will probably open a safeguarding concern because I used the wrong font. So we'll call him William, and we'll call her Vera. Again, not her real name. The children aren't their real names either. The events, though, are real. The paperwork is real. The hearings are real. The stress is real. The sleepless nights are real. The fear is real. The absurdity is definitely real. And if you've ever been through family court, social services, CAFCAS, safeguarding meetings, child protection conferences, domestic abuse allegations, false allegations, parental alienation, or any of the other wonderful attractions available at Britain's most expensive emotional theme park, you're going to recognize this story. Because although this story is about William, it probably isn't. It's probably about you. Now, before we begin, I want you to answer a question. And I genuinely want you to answer it. Put it in the comments if you can, if you're brave enough. Imagine your child comes home and says they're scared. What would you do? Would you ignore it? Would you investigate it? Would you ask questions? Would you trust professionals? Would you trust the system? Would you trust your instincts? Because that's where this story starts. Not in court, not in front of a judge, not with lawyers, and not with reports, not with social workers, and not with safeguarding plans, and not with complaints, not even with appeals. It starts where most family court stories start, with two people who once loved each other. Funny that, isn't it? Nobody starts a relationship imagining they'll eventually need a lever arch file the size of a fridge. Nobody sits in a restaurant on their first date thinking, one day we'll be arguing about the handovers outside of primary school while 3 professionals take notes. Nobody says, I can't wait until a stranger with a laptop explains my children to me. Oh, yet somehow, here we are. William and Vera met. They fell in love, or what they called love. Might have been lust, who knows. But they built a life. They had children. 3 beautiful daughters. The kind of children who don't care about court orders, don't care about statements, don't care about allegations. They don't care much about legal arguments. They care about bedtime stories, chicken nuggets, school trips, Christmas, whether dad can fix something, whether mum can find the missing shoe. And that's childhood. And for a while, everything was normal, or at least normal enough, because every family has arguments. Every family has stress. Every family has moments where somebody says something stupid. Usually me. Usually before breakfast, actually. But then things changed. The relationship ended. Now, here's the thing nobody tells you about separation. The breakup isn't the hard part. The hard part is realizing you're no longer arguing about your relationship. You're arguing about reality. Who said what? Who did what? What happened? What didn't happen? And that's when William made the same mistake thousands of parents make every year. He believed the truth would protect him. Bless him. Bless him. Honestly. I mean, bless him. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. He genuinely thought if something happened, he could simply just explain it, present evidence, logic, provide facts, show professionals, and everybody would reach a sensible conclusion and it'll all be fine. Now, if you've ever been through family court, you can stop laughing now, please, because you already know where this is going. William thought facts were king. He thought the truth mattered most. He thought evidence won. What he didn't realize was that family court isn't always a search for truth. It's a search for a decision. And those two things are not always the same. Now, before anybody loses their mind in the comments, I'm not saying facts don't matter. Of course they matter. Of course they do. I'd be silly not to say they don't matter. What I'm saying is something far more important. Facts alone are rarely enough because facts live inside narratives and narratives are powerful. Think about it. 2 people can watch exactly the same football match and tell completely different stories afterwards. One says the referee was biased. The other says the referee was fair. One says it was a penalty. The other says it wasn't. Same game, same facts, different story. Family court works exactly the same way. Only the stakes are much, much higher. And William hadn't learned that lesson yet. He still thought logic would save him. He thought consistency would save him. Bless him. He still thought professionals all talked to each other. That's adorable, isn't it? Bless him. Professionals talking to each other? What a lovely fantasy. Lovely, lovely idea. By the time this story is over, William will have met more professionals than most people meet neighbours, social workers replacing social workers replacing the social workers who replaced the original social workers, family support workers, school safeguarding leads, police officers, health visitors, court advisors, judges, independent professionals, review officers, managers, supervisors, panel members, meeting chairs, like the chairs of the meeting. And every single one of them will have had an opinion. Some informed, some uninformed, some contradictory, some genuinely helpful, some so bizarre that William would spend the drive home wondering if he'd accidentally walked into a hidden camera show. And here's what fascinates me. Most people watching this assume that villains in stories are obvious. They're not. Real life isn't a Disney film. Nobody walks into a room wearing a cape and announces they're the problem. Life is messier than that. Sometimes people are trying their best and still make terrible decisions. Sometimes good intentions create bad outcomes. Sometimes professionals genuinely care but get things wrong. And sometimes people see exactly what's happening and still convince themselves it isn't happening. Now that last one matters. Remember that, because it becomes very important later. Now, I want you to imagine William is sitting in his car, engine off, silence. The children are asleep inside the house, paperwork on the passenger seat, phone in hand, staring at a message. You know the stare, the one where you're reading the same sentence over and over again because your brain refuses to accept what it's seeing. Every parent watching this has had that moment. The moment you realize that this isn't ending anytime soon. The moment you realize that this isn't a disagreement, it's a process, a machine, a system, a marathon. And once William understood that, everything changed. Everything. Not because things got easier. They didn't. Far from it. Not because everyone became reasonable, please. They didn't. Not because the professionals suddenly agreed. They definitely didn't. Everything changed because William finally asked himself a question. And it was the question that would eventually change his entire approach. The question was this: what if I'm playing the wrong game? Not losing, not winning, just playing the wrong game. And trust me, that's the moment the story really begins. Because the next chapter introduces police, safeguarding concerns, child protection, professionals becoming worried, and a man called Tony. And a series of events so strange that if I wrote them as fiction, people would accuse me of exaggerating. But they happened. Every single one of them. So we'll call this moving into stage 2, part 2 maybe. The professionals arrive. Now, before we continue, I want you to think about something. When you hear the words professionals are involved, what do you imagine? Be honest. Be honest. Most people imagine a team of highly organized experts, information being shared, concerns being investigated, decisions being made, facts being checked. Everyone's rowing in the same direction, like some sort of like Avengers movie with safeguarding. You know what I mean? You know the one, you know what I'm saying? But don't worry, William thought that too. We all did. And that's exactly why what happened next hit him like a train, because reality looks very different. The reality looked very different. You see, by this point, William had been separated from Vera for years, not weeks, years, not months, years. There was no relationship, no romance, no attempts of getting back together, no arguments over who forgot to buy the milk, no late night emotional conversations, literally nothing. They had become what separated parents eventually become. Two people connected by children, and only children. And that's important because what happened next had absolutely nothing to do with William and Vera's relationship. It had everything to do with what was happening around the children. Now let's introduce another character. We'll call him Tony, and not his real name, obviously, but close enough for the purposes of this story. And Tony becomes important because his name starts appearing everywhere. Police reports, safeguarding discussions, professional concerns, school conversations, child protection meetings. You know, you're having a bad year when somebody else's name starts appearing on your paperwork more often than your own. I mean, that's something. Now, here's where things get strange. The concerns weren't being raised by William. That's the bit people always miss, because family court has trained everyone to believe every concern must be part of some evil master plan. Every concern must be tactical. Every concern must be manipulation. Every concern must be a parental alienation. Sometimes people are just worried. And professionals started becoming worried, really worried. The sort of worried that eventually results in meetings. And if you've never attended a safeguarding meeting, allow me to explain. Imagine being invited to a meeting about your children. Imagine everybody assuring you that it's about the children. Then imagine spending 3 hours discussing absolutely everything except the children. That's roughly the experience. Now, before anyone complains, I've attended enough of these meetings to know exactly what happens. The meetings start at 10. Nobody arrives at 10. One professional joins late. Another leaves early. One hasn't read the paperwork. One is looking for the wrong child. One has technical difficulties. One asks questions already answered in the report they were already holding. And somehow, we're all expected to pretend this is normal. But William remained optimistic. Bless him. Still optimistic. Still believing that facts mattered. Still believing consistency matters. Still believing everybody is working together. It's like watching somebody take a knife to a gunfight. Technically, you're armed. Practically, you're buggered. Still, things then escalated. Police became involved. More concerns emerged. Questions started being asked. Questions that weren't comfortable. Questions nobody really wanted to answer. Questions involving the children. Questions involving safety. Questions involving behavior. Questions involving whether everybody around the children was actually putting the children first. Now, here's where most people would expect things to become clearer. They don't. Not at all. This is family court world. Clarity is considered suspicious. I kid you not. The more serious things become, the more confusing everything seems to get. New reports, new meetings, new professionals, replacing new professionals, new opinions. And William began noticing something many parents notice. Every professional seemed to be describing a slightly different reality. Have you ever noticed that? One report says one thing, another report says something else. The third appears to have been written after somebody hit the random buttons on the keyboard, and somehow all three are considered professional advice and evidence. Remarkable, really, really remarkable. You couldn't build a shed like that, but apparently you can build decisions about children. Amazing. Now, eventually, something happened that changed everything. The concerns reached a point where professionals could no longer simply talk about them. Something had to happen, and the children ended up living with William. Pause there, because that's huge, absolutely huge. Parents who've never been through this will never fully understand. Parents who've been through family court will know exactly how significant this is. Children don't usually move homes unless concerns have reached a very serious level. Yet suddenly William found himself becoming something he never expected to become, the primary parent. Now let's be honest. Nobody writes books about being the primary parent. It's not glamorous. Nobody makes movies about packed lunches. Nobody wins Oscars for finding PE kits. Nobody gets standing ovations for attending parents' evenings. Nobody receives medals remembering their book day costumes. But that's parenting, real parenting. And suddenly, William was doing all of it. School runs, doctors, homework, bedtimes, uniforms, haircuts, dentists, packed lunch, permission slips, lost shoes, broken shoes, missing water bottles, last-minute costume disasters, the lot, the absolute lot. And here's the funny thing. The children settled. Funny, isn't it? Funny. Not funny. Ha, ha, ha. Funny. No. Funny, strange, funny. Because children tend to do quite well when life becomes predictable. Who knew? Who knew? Turns out children like knowing where they will sleep, who will collect them, what will happen tomorrow, what happens next week. Stability, I think the key word is there. Structure, maybe another one that you might want to use. Routine, maybe another one. The most boring words in the English dictionary or English language. And simultaneously, the most important words in parenting. Now, if this were a Hollywood film, this is where everything gets fixed. Music plays, credits roll, you name it, everybody learns a valuable lesson. The end. Unfortunately, this isn't Hollywood. This is family court, which means the next thing that happened made absolutely no sense to William whatsoever. Instead of concerns reducing, meetings increased. Instead of clarity, more confusion. Instead of answers, more questions. And then came the child protection plan. Now, some people watching this will know exactly what that means. Others won't. So let me translate. The child protection plan is basically the system saying we are sufficiently concerned that we're now going to have regular meetings about how concerned we are. And before anybody complains, tell me I'm wrong. Go on. Please do tell me I'm wrong. Tell me. I'm all ears. No, you can't, can you? You can't. Because basically that's what happens. Meeting after meeting after meeting. Report after report after report. Action plan after action plan. Review after review. Meanwhile, the children are still trying to work out what they're having for tea. Now, here's where William started noticing something fascinating. The concerns didn't disappear. Read that again. Hear that again. The concerns didn't disappear. People talk as if concerns vanish. They don't. They evolve. They get renamed, reframed, reworded, reinterpreted, but they don't necessarily disappear. And yet, despite this, something odd began happening. The conversation slowly shifted, not towards risk, towards contact, more contact, longer contact, additional contact, expanded contact. And William found himself asking a question that would eventually drive him completely mad. If the concerns were serious enough for children to move, why do we keep acting like the concerns no longer exist? Simple question, reasonable question, more than reasonable, dangerous question, but yeah, it's a reasonable question, because the moment you ask questions like that, you risk becoming difficult. And here's a lesson I wish more parents understood. The system often doesn't punish aggression. It punishes persistence. Keep asking awkward questions long enough and suddenly people start describing you as challenging. William discovered this very quickly. Every concern he raised seemed to become evidence that he was raising concerns. Read that sentence twice. That's right. It's important. Imagine calling the fire brigade because your house is on fire, and then the report says, William appears highly focused on fire. Well, yes, his house was bloody burning down. What do you expect? Now, by this point, William had met so many professionals, he was starting to lose track. Social worker 1, social worker 2, and social worker 3, new manager, new chairperson, new professionals, new review officer. At one point, there were so many new faces that William genuinely considered printing name badges. And every new professional arrived with exactly the same confidence. The confidence of somebody who's been reading a file for 20 minutes and believes they've solved a 5-year problem. Remarkable confidence. I admire it. Really, I do. But it's terrifying. Admirable, but terrifying. Now, here's where things become really important. Because despite everything, William still hadn't learned the biggest lesson. Not yet. That's coming. He still believed somebody was eventually going to walk into the room and say, right, we've figured it out. They weren't. Because family court isn't a detective story. It's a management process. And those are very different things. William was still looking for the truth. The system was looking for progress. And the difference was it's about to create one of the biggest collisions in the entire case. We arrive at the final hearing. The hearing that was supposed to bring certainty. The hearing that was supposed to end years of conflict. The hearing where William would discover that everybody wasn't even reading the same paperwork. Different bundles, missing statements, open cases, procedural chaos, appeals, loads of appeals, complaints all the way up to the government, and one moment so ridiculous that even now people struggle to believe it even happened. That's where this story gets next, because in part 3, we arrive at the final hearing. The hearing that was supposed to bring certainty. The hearing that was supposed to end years of conflict. The hearing where William would discover that everybody wasn't even reading the same paperwork. Different bundles, missing statements, open cases, procedural chaos, appeals, complaints, and one moment so ridiculous that even now people struggle to believe it even happened. That's where this story goes next. And trust me, the best part is still to come. So let's move into part 3, shall we? The hearing nobody was supposed to question. Nobody. Every family court parent remembers the certain days. Not birthdays, not Christmas, no, not holidays, court dates. You remember court dates. You remember where you parked. You remember what you wore, how little you slept the night before, what you ate or didn't eat. You remember sitting outside the courtroom pretending to be calm while your stomach is performing gymnastics that would win Olympic medals. You remember every second. William remembers this day, because this was supposed to be the end, the final hearing. I love that phrase, the final hearing. It's family court's version of one last thing. You hear the words and think, thank God it's finally over. Then 6 months later, you're in another hearing, discussing another topic, another application, about an order that was supposed to end everything. But William didn't know that yet. He still believed this was the finishing line. He still believed somebody would walk into the room, examine all the evidence, look at the history and look at the concerns, look at the reports, look at the child protection plan, look at everything that happened over the previous 5 years and make sensible decisions. Again, bless him, still believing, still hoping, still praying, still carrying around that dangerous thing called faith in the process. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean absolutely bloody ridiculous. William arrived prepared. He had his paperwork, his notes, his chronology, his evidence, his understanding of the case, his understanding of the history, everything. He had it nailed, or at least he thought he did. Then the hearing started. And within minutes, he realized something was wrong. Very wrong. The sort of wrong that makes your brain stop working for a second. The sort of wrong where you think, hang on, then, no, then, surely not. And then, you've got to be kidding me. Because the court appeared to be looking at documents William had never seen. Read that again. The court appeared to be looking at documents William had never seen. Now, if you've never been to family court, you might not sound particularly dramatic, But let me translate. Imagine sitting an exam. Halfway through the exam, you realize everyone else is answering questions from a different paper. And that's roughly how it felt. Imagine playing a football match and discovering one team is using different rules. Imagine turning up to a chess tournament and finding out your opponent has 3 extra pieces. Same feeling. And here's the truly remarkable part. The hearing carried on. Nobody slammed on the brakes. Nobody stopped everything. Nobody said, well, this can't be good. Hold on 1 minute. This doesn't seem right. The train kept moving. Now, let's be fair. Maybe nobody realized the scale of the problem. Maybe everybody assumed somebody else had dealt with it. Maybe somebody thought that somebody else had served something else. Maybe somebody believed everyone believed everyone had the same bundle. Maybe. But here's the reality. William was trying to fight for his children while discovering there was parts of the case he hadn't even seen. And if you've ever represented yourself, you'll know exactly how terrifying that feels. Because suddenly, you're not just arguing your case. You're trying to work out what case everybody else is arguing. Now, remember all those years, the meetings, the child protection plans, the reports, the concerns. They're all raised by them. Them raising the concerns, not him. Endless discussions, the thousands of pages of reports. Remember all of that because another discovery was waiting. The history William thought was before the court didn't seem to be before the court at all. Some of the most important safeguarding history he had put in there had appeared to vanish into a black hole. The previous proceedings, gone. The safeguarding material, gone. The wider context, gone. The bigger picture, gone. Years of history, gone. Years. Or at least not being treated the way William believed they should have been. And suddenly the entire hearing starts making more sense or less sense. It's difficult to know which. Because have you ever had one of those moments where the thing confusing you suddenly explains every other confusing thing? That's where William found himself. The outcome started feeling disconnected from the history. The history started feeling disconnected from the evidence. The evidence started feeling disconnected from the concerns. And the concerns started feeling disconnected from the decisions. And that's when William experienced something every family court parent eventually experiences. The moment you stop asking, why did they decide that? And start asking, what information were they actually looking at? Very different question. Much more important question. Now, if this was a Hollywood film, this is where the hero stands up, delivers a powerful speech, and everybody gasps. Justice prevails. Credits roll. Instead, the order was made. The hearing ended. People left. Life carried on. At least on paper. But something had changed because William walked out carrying a feeling he couldn't shake. You know the feeling. The one that sits in your stomach. The one that keeps you awake at 2 a.m. The one that says, something wasn't right. Now, here's where most people give up. Most people are exhausted by this point. Financially exhausted. Emotionally exhausted. Psychologically exhausted. Physically exhausted. The average family court parent isn't running on energy. They're running on caffeine, spit, and blind determination. And eventually, most people reach a point where they simply cannot fight anymore. Nobody blames them. It's brutal. But William couldn't let it go because he kept coming back to the same question. What if the outcome wasn't the problem? What if the process was? That's a dangerous thought because the moment you start questioning process, you're no longer arguing about parenting. You're arguing about fairness, and fairness makes people uncomfortable. And here's the lesson. The biggest lesson in this entire story. The lesson I wish every father and every mother understood before they ever entered a courtroom. Are you ready? The system is not your parent. The system is not your friend. The system is not your enemy. The system is a machine. And machines don't care how you feel. Machines respond to inputs, evidence, behavior, documentation, consistency, credibility, paper trails, records, timelines, professional conduct. The parents who survive family court aren't always the parents who are right. They're the parents who understand that reality. Now, before everybody starts twisting my words, I'm not saying truth doesn't matter. Of course it matters. What I'm saying is the truth without evidence struggles. Evidence without credibility struggles. Credibility without consistency struggles. Everything matters. And William learned that lesson the hard way. Now let's talk about something nobody likes to talk about. Personal responsibility. Because it'd be very easy to make William the hero and everyone else the villain. Life doesn't work like that though. William made mistakes. Everybody does. He got frustrated. Everybody does. He'd said things he shouldn't have done. Everybody does. He lost patience. Everybody does. The difference is he learned. And that's what changed everything. You see, the version of William sitting here today isn't the same William who walked into family court years earlier. That William thought evidence spoke for itself. This William knows evidence needs presenting. That William thought professionals automatically communicated. This William documents everything. That William thought being right was enough. This William knows credibility is built slowly, very slowly, painfully, one interaction at a time, one hearing at a time, one email at a time, one meeting at a time. And that's why I'm telling you this story. Not because William is unique, because he isn't. Every week I meet another William. Different postcode, different children, different allegations, different paperwork. Same story, same confusion, same fear, same frustration, same feeling that they're being swallowed by a machine they don't understand. And here's what I tell every single one of them. Stop trying to win. Start trying to become credible. Stop trying to destroy the other parent. Start trying to become the safest parent. Stop trying to prove everyone wrong. Start proving yourself right. Because the moment you do that, everything changes. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily, strategically, powerfully. Now let me leave you with this one final question. Imagine you're William, 5 years, 6 years, multiple hearings, child protection plans, social workers, police involvement, appeals, complaints, thousands and thousands of pages, thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, years of your life. What would you do? Would you give up? Would you keep fighting? Would you trust the process? Would you challenge it? Would you walk away? Would you appeal? What would you do? Tell me below, because the answer says far more about you than it does about William. And if you're currently living your own version of this story, remember this: your children don't need a perfect parent. They need a parent who keeps showing up, even when they're tired, even when they're frustrated, even when they feel defeated, even when nobody seems to be listening. Keep showing up. Document everything. Stay calm. Stay strategic. Stay child-focused. Because one day, your children will be old enough to understand what happened. And when that day comes, the only opinion that really matters is theirs. And unlike the court, unlike the professionals, unlike the reports, unlike the meetings, unlike the system, they're the ones you'll have to live with for the rest of your life. The end. Or at least the end of this chapter.